In this video, I'm going to outline exactly how I allocated my time whilst I was studying for the GAMSAT. If you're new here, I'm Hugh and I'm a first year medical student. When I sat the GAMSAT last, I was working full time. I'd done it 3 times prior and done pretty badly, and I was bloody desperate to get into medicine. I couldn't think of anything better. Now that I'm here, it's great that it paid off. But at the time, I was very scared. I didn't want to make a mess of this exam, and so I needed to find a way to really allocate my time the best. In previous attempts, I'd not been smart about this, so through many of the lessons about getting real with myself, I was able to come up with a better structure. I'd like to discuss how I laid out my time and how I prepared during the week, and how you might be able to as well. So when you're preparing for this exam, I think it's important to think of it, it's a bit like a sport, right? There's very specific demands that this exam has. For instance, if you go through the actual examination information booklet, you'll see 3 things come up. Essentially, that you need to be able to think critically in humanities and sciences, you need to be able to form written arguments, and you need to also have a fairly reasonable mastery of the basic sciences. So they're kind of the 3 primary components. Sitting around that is things like your focus and your ability to work for long periods of time and do mathematics quickly and a variety of different things. But what's really key here is identifying what's most important and spending the bulk of your time on that. So taking this on board, that the examination is a test of critical thinking and of your written communication, my goals for examination day were to understand the reasoning and rationale behind every one of the published practice questions, to develop a writing style that could consistently produce high quality essays. And I think it's important to note that there are 725 practice questions published by ASA, and there's 4 marked essays. That's a lot of work. Like, if you actually go and sit down and work through each of those questions, that's could be hundreds of hours worth of work. In terms of my preparation, that's literally what I did. Every morning, I would sit down and I would dissect individual questions one at a time. I might spend 15 or 20 minutes or even an hour on one single question bank, because I wanted to go through and make sure I understand exactly what was going on within that question. And if I didn't understand something, or there was a science topic that was unfamiliar or a humanities topic that was unfamiliar to me, I'd go and look it up and I'd learn it, and then I'd come back. And if I made a mistake, then I would go and work to find out why I'd made that mistake. I think it's really important to note here that you're not just rote learning answers, you're actually trying to learn the reasoning. And I keep saying that it's really important that you understand why the answer is the way it is, not that you just know that's the answer because you've done that paper 10 times. But what was really cool about this approach is that I did start to notice patterns. When I got to the exam day, there was questions that were very, very similar to those that had been published in the ASA papers. Okay, so enough about that, but how did I actually allocate my time? I spent about 60 to 70% of my time just doing practice questions and crafting essays. I spent another 20 to 30% of my time learning the content, so it might be the science topics, and sort of reading through some books. And then I spent another sort of 5 to 10% of my time learning about logic and reasoning and critical thinking specifically. And whilst this was only a small part, it was a really important part, because what it did was allow me to think differently and think better, to upgrade my brain, so to speak, in terms of actually interpreting questions better and being able to reason better. So I prepared for about 7 months beforehand. I was sitting so it was 2020, it was the UK exam, so I think that was supposed to be about September. I'd originally planned for a 6-month prep, but with COVID, the exam got bumped out a little bit, so it ended up being about 7 months of preparation that I did. With that, I think that last month, that 7th month, was kind of just a bit of a maintenance period, because I felt like I'd kind of peaked in terms of my ability and my critical thinking, and without going back to the beginning and restarting everything, I didn't feel like I could do any better than I was currently doing. So I guess what I'm thinking there is, for most people, 6 months is probably an adequate amount of time to prepare. And I guess if you're watching this right now, you've got 4 months till the September GAMSAT, which is really quite a lot of time. That's about 18 weeks we've got until that's there. If you're preparing sort of 10-15 hours a week, on top of your normal job or uni or whatever you're doing, you could be putting in 180 to 260 hours worth of effort, which is quite a lot of time. So in terms of some more practicalities and what I did, so I would study for 1 to 2 hours every morning, and then on the weekends I'd usually have 2 4-hour blocks. But what I did do is I made sure that no session was any shorter than 30 minutes. And to me, that was really important because what it allowed me to do was develop that longer term focus. And I used a stopwatch. So I was really, really well aware of how much time I was actually preparing, how much time I was actually studying. Because, 1 to 2 hours a day doesn't sound like a lot for a lot of people, particularly if you're a uni student, you're used to many hours of lectures. But the truth is that is really focused effort, it can be very, very effective. For those of you who are watching this and you're working, you're busy, you've got a lot of uni on, but you still want to apply and do this exam well, something you should probably consider doing first is a bit of a stock take of how your life looks. Firstly, figuring out where you waste your time, getting an understanding of what that is. Is it Netflix, video games, scrolling on Instagram, TikTok, don't know, whatever it is. Then you also need to get an understanding of all the things you might be able to get out of. And I guess that's because, if you want to do medicine, there's a lot of sacrifices you're going to have to make. And so think about, why you want to do this and how much you want to give up to do this. You can start to look at, well, what are the things that I might be able to cut out of my week, at least for the next couple of months. Finally, what are the things you can't get out of? We're all going to have things that we have to do each week. You might have children, you might have lectures, you might have work, you might have a sick parent. There's a variety of things that there's just life, right? It's really important that when you're looking at a study plan, that you actually map those out and put them down, because they're not going away. And so you're going to need to be aware of where they are and how you can work around them. And once you've done all of that, you can then actually sit down and work out a plan. Make it 1 to 2 hours a day of focused effort. Put it in the hours that you are most productive. So for some of you that's in the morning, some of you that might be in the middle of the night. Put that time in there and make sure you prioritize those. Protect them as best you can, because you need to think about this as an investment, right? You are investing in getting yourself into medicine or getting yourself into dentistry or optometry or whatever it is that you're doing. If you don't give that everything, it might not happen. And then you have to repeat it and there's another year goes by. So it's really, really key that even if you only have a limited amount hours in the day that you can do this, that you protect those as much as possible. And when you're starting out doing this, look, it's not going to be perfect. Things will be good, things will be bad. Keep working with it, but you should find that after a couple of weeks, you'll get a bit of a groove going and you'll be much better and you'll really be rolling along. And I guess for me, what was cool is that ultimately, I got a better score, but I showed myself that I could do things that were uncomfortable. That I knew the content that came examination day. I was very well versed in the sciences and I leveled up my critical thinking, which now is really helping. And I also learned that even with small, consistent efforts, you could really get a lot done. And that's super important. If you enjoyed this, thank you for watching all the way to the end. Like, subscribe, share it with a friend of yours you think might need it. Thank you. Peace.